Picture this, an iPad so powerful it rivals high-end laptops with a display that makes reality look dull, encased in a design that's almost impossibly thin and light. That's the M4 iPad Pro in a nutshell. But as impressive as all this is, it's missing one crucial thing that can make it truly revolutionary. Let's get started by talking about the hardware. This latest iPad Pro is an ultra-thin marvel of engineering. At just 5.3 millimeters thin for the 11-inch model and an even slimmer 5.1 millimeters for this 13-inch model that I've been reviewing, it's actually the thinnest device Apple has ever made. The Apple Card is not a device, right? Period. It's mind-boggling to imagine the sheer amount of cutting-edge tech they've managed to pack into something about as thick as 4 credit cards stacked together. And despite being so thin it almost disappears when you look at it from the side, the M4 iPad Pro is still as sturdy and durable as ever. That's thanks to the smart use of materials like graphite and copper to improve thermal performance by around 20%. Speaking of looks, there's this new space black color option in addition to the more traditional silver. And in a long overdue change, Apple finally moved the front camera to the landscape edge. So now your face will actually be centered on video calls when using the iPad with, say, a Magic Keyboard or just in landscape orientation. It's a small but significant tweak that makes the front camera infinitely more usable. But the real magic happens when you turn on this breathtaking Ultra Retina XDR display. Seeing it in person, it makes everything else look like a flickering black and white TV from the 1950s. So let's talk about it. Unleashing that Ultra Retina XDR display felt like stepping out of a movie theater after watching the latest summer blockbuster and realizing the world suddenly looks a bit flat. What Apple accomplished here is really stunning. Now here's the secret sauce. This iPad uses not one, but 2 OLED displays stacked together. It's a bit like those glow-in-the-dark stars you might have had on your ceiling as a kid. One star is pretty bright on its own, but layer a whole bunch together and you've got a mini galaxy lighting up your room. It's a tandem OLED design that Apple is calling the Ultra Retina XDR display, and it allows the screen to hit an eye-searing 1600 nits of peak brightness for HDR content. And to put that in perspective, the brightest laptop screens out there typically hit around 500 nits maximum. So yeah, this is like having a miniature sun in your hands. But brightness is only half of the equation. The other side is contrast, and that's where OLED really shines, pun intended. See, with OLED, each individual pixel can turn itself off to display true black. No more washed out grays masquerading as black like on LCD screens, and blooming is finally a thing of the past. So when you're watching a space movie, the void of space is a deep inky black, while stars and galaxies pop off the screen with vibrant color. But what's really wild is that all this visual splendor is happening on a screen you can literally hold in your hand. A display so advanced that it can make reality seem a little boring when you look up from it. Now, if you happen to be a creative pro working in bright conditions, Apple's got your back. There's an optional nanotexture glass finish that scatters light to minimize glare. I plan to do an in-depth review on a nanotexture model soon, so be sure you're subscribed for that. But do know that in the limited time I spent with a nanotexture iPad Pro, there were 2 things that stuck out to me. First, it really does do a fantastic job eliminating glare. So if you rely on that for work, that is the iPad to get. But 2, if you don't rely on it for precision work, I think you should skip it because the nanotexture finish does make the picture on the display less vibrant. But let's be real here. Specs are just numbers on a page until you see them in action in person. Swiping through photos feels like you're holding a viewfinder window into another world. Watching a nature documentary or your favorite show transports you into a hidden realm of vibrant hues. And the HDR performance, let's just say there's no going back to SDR after basking in the warm glow of Severance at 1600 nits. Oh, and please hurry up with season 2, Apple. Now, here is my honest opinion. This display isn't just the best display ever seen on an iPad. This is arguably the best screen to ever grace any portable device. But to really push this iPad Pro over the top, Apple needed to add a special ingredient. And at the beating heart of this tablet making all those pixels dance is the absurdly powerful M4 chip. And let me tell you, it's an absolute beast. Apple started with cutting-edge 3nm process technology, which is a fancy way of saying they crammed an insane number of transistors into a tiny space for maximum efficiency. It's like building a city block on a postage stamp. The result? CPU speeds up to 1.5 times faster than the already speedy M2 iPad Pro, while the 10-core GPU delivers a staggering 4 times increase for your favorite rendering apps. Then there's the 16-core neural engine. This is the part of the chip chip dedicated to machine learning and artificial intelligence. And with the ability to crunch 38 trillion operations per second, it's a bit like having a genius supercomputer tucked under the hood. And we'll talk more about this in a bit, but I suspect that the neural engine is where a lot of the future of this device lies. But what does all this mean for the real world? Imagine you're editing a 4K video in Final Cut Pro. With a single tap, the M4 can instantly isolate your subject from the background. And I mean instantly, like as instant as pressing your light switch. Or if you're a musician using an app like StaffPad, it can transform your piano noodling into a perfectly notated score in real time. Now, I know what some of you are thinking because I was thinking the same thing. Apple kept comparing the M4 to the M2 because that's what was in the previous iPad Pro. But how does it compare to the M3 that was literally released just 6 months ago? Is the M4 really much of an improvement over the M3? Since Apple was so quiet on this front, I assumed the M4 was just a warmed over M3. But I was wrong. You see, the Geekbench 6 scores speak for themselves. Single core performance leaps from a score of 3,131 on the M3 to 3,767 on the M4. That's a 20% increase. And the multi-core gains are even more impressive, soaring from 11,702 on the M3 to a jaw-dropping 14,677 on the M4. That's a 25% increase. And again, when you consider the fact that the M3 was released just 6 months ago, things are starting to look really impressive. So what we're looking at here is not just an iterative speed bump, but a big improvement in computing performance. And the crazy part, the M4 delivers these staggering speeds while sipping power like a fine wine, allowing the iPad Pro to still deliver the 10-hour battery life that it's known for. But a chip this powerful is a bit like a supercar engine. It needs a chassis to match. And that's where the iPad Pro's redesigned thermal architecture comes into play, with advanced materials like graphene and copper that help keep things cool when you're pushing the pedal to the metal. So whether you're a designer, musician, video editor, or just someone who wants the absolute best tech in their hands, the M4 iPad Pro is a creative powerhouse. But the fun doesn't stop there because we haven't even talked about the new accessories yet. So let's talk about the new Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil Pro. Starting with the keyboard. The moment I snapped my iPad into it, I could feel the difference. You'd think this new aluminum body would give it some serious heft, but it doesn't at all. It feels just as light as the previous all plastic model, but way more premium. Typing on this is like typing on a MacBook Air. And that new trackpad, it's also giving MacBook vibes. Not only is it bigger, but it now gives you haptic feedback, so you can feel that click despite it not being an actual button. And I know a lot of you are gonna love this part. You get a row of function keys, 14 of them to be exact, giving you quick access to all your essential controls without ever lifting your hands off the keyboard. Brightness, volume, media playback controls, it's all right there at your fingertips. And it's one of those small touches that make a big deal in everyday use. You can get the Magic Keyboard in the same sleek silver aluminum with white cover or space black with black cover to perfectly match the color of your iPad Pro. Oh, and that smart connector on the inside now supports charging at up to 60 watts through the keyboard's USB-C port. And hey, what's an iPad Pro without an Apple Pencil? Enter the Apple Pencil Pro, which Apple has tried to make feel like an extension of your hand. The precision and responsiveness are obviously still there, but the real game changer for me is the new haptic feedback. Let me explain. The way you access the new tool palette feels straight out of a sci-fi movie. Just give the Pencil Pro a little squeeze and bam, you get a nice bit of haptic feedback and your tools are right there. No more fumbling through menus. The Apple Pencil Pro also introduces this new barrel roll feature. Just roll the pencil in your fingers to change the orientation of your tools, just like you would with a real pen and paper. No more having to physically move the iPad itself when you want to change that orientation. It's these little details that make the Apple Pencil Pro feel more like a true artist's tool. But here's the thing. Apple has obviously packed a desktop class chip into this small, thin tablet form factor. And I admit, that is no small feat. But as impressive as the M4 is, it still feels like the software is holding the iPad Pro back from its true potential. The hardware is light years ahead, and the OS needs to catch up. And that brings us to the elephant in the room, iPadOS. Don't get me wrong, wrong, iPadOS has come a long way in recent years. But when you're holding a device this powerful with a processor that outpaces most laptops, you start to wonder why you can't do more of those tasks that you can do on your laptop. Where's the robust multitasking? Why do I still feel like I'm fighting iPadOS to get real work done sometimes? Here's an example. On a Mac, you can run pro apps like Final Cut Pro and start an export and leave it in the background while you work on something else. And the Mac will just let Final Cut Pro keep crunching away until the task is complete. But on iPadOS, if you're editing in Final Cut Pro and start an export and then switch away to something else, your export task will be canceled. That's the big problem for pro workflows where you need to multitask while you have apps working hard in the background. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about the iPad Pro not being a capable machine. For a lot of tasks, it absolutely is. But when we're talking about really pushing the boundaries and using that M4 chip that you paid for to its full potential, these software limitations start to feel more apparent. It's a bit like having a supercar that's stuck in traffic. All that power and all that potential are just waiting to be unleashed or let loose. And that's where WWDC comes in, as Apple has a big opportunity here. The rumor mill has been buzzing for months that this could be the year that iOS and iPadOS get a big breakout moment. Maybe it's the year that iPadOS steps out of iOS's shadow and becomes a true productivity powerhouse. During the Let Loose event that introduced these new iPad Pros and the M2 iPad Air, Apple actually said very little about iPadOS. And with WWDC just a month away, it makes sense. But it does feel like they're setting up for something major. What with the power of the M4's neural engine, tuned for being an AI powerhouse, WWDC could be a watershed moment for the iPad. A moment where the hardware and software finally click together in perfect alignment and the true potential of this device is realized. Because let's face it, the iPad Pro, this iPad Pro in particular, with the M4 chip and this new design, super thin, almost weightless, this is a marvel of engineering. But it's the software, and it's always the software that will determine how good a piece of hardware really is. Are we looking at a true disruptor with the M4 iPad Pro, or is it just the world's most impressive tablet? As a diehard iPad fan, I'm hoping for the former. I'm ready for my iPad Pro to be my digital Swiss Army knife that can handle anything I throw at it. And with the M4 chip under the hood and rumors of a reimagined iPadOS, it feels like that day might actually be in sight. The M4 iPad Pro truly is something special. Just picking this up and holding it in your hands, it's obvious that a lot of work and clever engineering were required to make a device this good, this light, this thin, this fast, and this power efficient. If you already use an iPad Pro for work, you are going to love this upgrade. As a tablet, there's nothing better on earth. Just remember that you're getting the same iPadOS 17 experience that you're already familiar with on all the other iPads. My eyes are now set on June 10th and what Apple will be announcing on the software side of things, because I truly believe that's when we'll really understand what the new iPad Pro can do. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I appreciate your support. I'm Andrew Webbers, and I will catch you in the next video.